All right.
Yeah.
Hello. And thank you everyone participating in this second online lecture about historical and contemporary woodcarving sculptors and artists. This event will be recorded and put online on my YouTube channel. So if you do not want to be on the video, please disable your camera now. My name is Lara Domeneghetti, a woodcarver and gilder from Italy, based in Norway. I'm welcoming everyone, this time from the cozy workshop at Filberg Småbruk, close to Gjøvik in Norway, where I'm currently helping my friend and colleague to build her own workshop. With these lectures, friends and fellow practitioners are trying to create a platform for discussion, sharing ideas and present themselves and their practice. In our last lecture, we talked with gilder and sculptor Sarah Davies, and this time we continue with our conversation with Wilfe Gorlin. This lecture will deepen Wilfe's master research and his thoughts about us woodcarvers who work in a very mechanized and capitalistic world. Wilfe's workshop is based in London, and he is currently also teaching woodcarving at City and Guilds of London Art School. We thank him for planting the seed for an international community of woodcarvers through his project called Capital-ist, where fellow woodcarvers and colleagues, including myself, have been asked to contribute in his master project last year. During our meetings about the collaborative project and exchange of ideas, we started to ask ourselves how young and aspiring practitioners of the woodcarving craft could communicate more frequently and create a more international platform. So here we are now. As some of the current listeners know, I have used the Capital project also as a course team at Dovre's School of Traditional Crafts, where students had a week to finish a capital with a medieval ornament or motif on it. Now, please feel free to write questions in the chat during the lecture. We will get back to them at the end of the talk during our short Q&A. Make sure that your microphone is off during Wilfe's presentation, so he's not interrupted by background noises. Thank you all and welcome, Wilfe.
Thanks, Lara. That was a great introduction. And yeah, really happy to be here and talking to you today. So yeah, I'm gonna jump right in. I'm just gonna share my screen here. Okay. So yeah, so Capital-ist is the name of my project. Yeah, it was kind of an idea that I came up with when I was studying for my masters. I just going to jump in just before that, just to talk about, yeah, so I did a 3-year diploma in traditional ornamental carving, and at the end of the 3 years, I felt very, excited and inspired to get out into the world and sort of see what was there as a woodcarver. And when I kind of went out there, I ended up in a bit of a, existential crisis. And I just had some big questions, these sort of traditional skills that I'd learned. I was trying to find a place for them and think about kind of what they meant in our current society. And I was trying to, set up a business and was trying to earn a living. And we actually were approached by a big development in Pall Mall in London. They were asking for us to carve a bunch of capitals, and we sort of gave them a price, and we ended up getting priced out of the job by a company that ships hand-carved capitals from India. I've got a picture of them here, and you can buy them pretty cheap, a fraction of the price that we could do them at. So I sort of looked at this online. I could see you could just order these things online. They're carved in European beech, shipped to India where they're hand carved, shipped back to the UK, and their price online is 558 plus VAT and delivery. It came to about £700. So this sort of really like sparked some ideas. I was sort of struggling with this reality that I was faced with. So I decided to use it for my master's project. So I came up with this project. So the idea was to design a capital that could be produced at a competitive market rate. So I was thinking, well, if 700 quid is the market rate for a capital, a reasonable wage to earn in London would be about £200 a day, plus materials. So I thought, right, I need to be able to design a capital that you can make in 3 days. So that was kind of the initial goal of the project. But of course, it also led me to think about what a Corinthian capital is. What does it mean? What does it stand for in our society? And sort of how does it fit into the general aesthetic of our environment? And I just sort of thought, well, you can sort of challenge this, so I don't have to conform to any of these sort of traditional styles. So I thought, well, I'll make the project fun. I'll flip it around and I'll see what I can carve in 3 days using my design skills, whatever tools I have available to me, and just have fun with it and experiment. So that's where I went with the project. And then I started thinking about material. I thought, one of the things that kind of shocked me particularly about this capital that you could ship from India was that the kind of environmental impact that it has, taking this wood from Europe, shipping it to India, having it, there's all kinds of ethical questions that came up for me with this. And I thought sustainability is really, it's a massive subject for us to grapple with. And, there's many artists who are kind of dealing with this. So I thought, well, how can I bring that into my practice? So I thought about only using timber that was either offcuts, reclaimed, comes from trees that have been cut down for domestic purposes. I was kind of focusing on that. And I also thought that would be interesting in terms of carving different woods, because, we get our education, we kind of got, ended up just carving lime wood and oak, really, because they're the traditional woods. But I wanted to experiment with this. And that kind of led me on to thinking about the different meanings of different woods and what wood might mean to us in our day and age. And I'll hopefully talk about that a little bit later. And then, so it was all about kind of thinking about our place as professional makers in an industry that has shifted massively. We don't have a guild system anymore. We don't have bustling workshops anymore. We're all kind of atomized individuals, self-employed, freelance. That's kind of the system that we're in, and competing with these kind of international markets, and just trying to question that, really, and understand how we could fit into that. So that was what the project was about. So I decided to open up this idea. So I was going, the original idea of carving a capital in 3 days, I'm going to open this up and invite other people to partake in this. And there's a few reasons why I did that, but one of the main ones is that I think it's our natural habitat as carvers and craftspeople is working collaboratively. We've never been this kind of individualization that's happened. I don't think it's the natural place to be. I think it's much more dynamic and inspiring to be working with a group. I also think that carving itself generally has always been part of a larger scheme of work, so I was thinking about cathedrals in particular, and I really like this idea of a group of artisans, craftspeople, builders, sculptors, artists working together for a building that would then serve the community as a place of worship. And I think that's an integral part of what we do, and one of the things that really draws me to these kinds of crafts. So and then on the other side of that, it's about, I think, talking about guilds, talking about support networks, and kind of overcoming this individualization, atomization that we're dealing with. I think it's very important. So I wanted to collaborate with people around me, people who I'd worked with, people who I know from college. Yeah, so that's where that began. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the project. So I wanted, like I said, I wanted to use only timber that was reclaimed, repurposed. So I had offcuts, but I also sourced wood that had been felled for domestic purposes locally, just outside of London. I just took random bits that I thought that were going to work with the sizing, and then left it open as an experiment. I think this is a good way to work because I think we have to think about where our timber is sourced, and so we have to be able to work with bits that aren't necessarily perfect, because we just don't have access to lots and lots of perfect wood anymore, especially not at any kind of affordable price. So I think it seemed like a good and interesting exercise to work with some different pieces of wood. Yeah. So I sort of designed this blank capital, as it were. So I sort of figured out, I actually used the proportions and dimensions of a traditional Corinthian capital to kind of make the shape that I would then give to each carver, and they were allowed to have complete creative control. No one was beholden to any kind of stylistic stylistic motif or anything like that. I was just really wanted everyone to kind of have a go at it. But what I did try and encourage was the time constraint, because that was, that's why I called it capitalist, because it's like we're being forced by the economic system to be able to work, to produce work at a lowered rate. So I wanted that to kind of also ignite some creativity. I thought, well, if we're in the design process, can we design things that are effective visually, but can be done quickly? I think one of the good things is that we're in a point where we're not constrained by stylistic. We're not constrained by any styles because we live in the time we live in. So I thought, well, let's have fun with that and let's play around with just completely different visual languages. So yeah, so I gave everyone a blank capital, different woods, and just see what came out of it. This is a picture of the kind of production line. So I was using a table saw, hand planes, glue, everything's joined up. So it's kind of, I wasn't holding back on whatever machinery I had available to me. Yeah, so here's the capitals. So I'm going to run through them. So yeah, so here's Sarah's in oak. She, it's very abstract. I know that she had, it was kind of inspired by the idea of fissures in the ground. So it's kind of like cracks in the ground that she went with. I think it was very effective and very minimal. It didn't have to take a long time, but it looked really good up there. Here's Borys's. So this, he was inspired. So he had sweet chestnut. And he was inspired by the sweet chestnut trees that were in his local park, and he'd always wanted to do a green man. So this is a green man with chestnut leaves carved in chestnut. I think it took him a little bit longer than 3 days, that one, but it's all right. We forgive him. This is Oscar's. So again, Oscar sort of leaned into the abstracted freedom and did something that was very manageable within the time constraint. I was very impressed with how sort of visually effective it was, but simple it was to carve. So I think him and Sarah did very well with that part of the brief. This is one of my ones. So I was experimenting with photocopied collages as a way of designing. So I was using Carl Blossfeldt. He's got a book of all this kind of botanical photography, and I was kind of making photocopy collages and then using them as designs and then carving. These were manna ash flowers with ash leaves carved in ash. So I was using the wood, and as soon as it's got this kind of amazing grains, as soon as I started carving into it, I was just kind of letting that lead me visually, in terms of what I did, in terms of how it carving came out. These were Jim's. So he was thinking about plant forms, but on a kind of microscopic scale. So he was sort of thinking about the little tubes that you get within the wood. So he was kind of like, the idea was creating the grain, a kind of sculptural version of the grain out of wood that's within the wood, which I thought was a very interesting idea. Got Lara's here in London Plain. I'm going to let Lara talk a little bit about hers when she jumps in, and how it was to carve that wood, because I know it's very hard. I didn't actually get to carve any in the end, but yeah, interested to hear her thoughts on that. Here's another one with Jim's again in London Plain. Again, he was just kind of thinking about plant forms, this kind of traditional idea of plant forms, but changing it up a little bit. Here's another one of mine. So this is sapele wood, which is African hardwood they're using it a lot now for joinery, because it's very rot resistant. And so there's loads of offcuts for everywhere. So obviously there's some ethical questions about that, but I thought, well, being as there's so much of it in London at the moment, because all the big joinery firms are using it, might as well use some of the offcuts. Again, this is one of my playing around with the photocopy collage. And this is a collaboration that I did with my studio partner, Armand. He's a painter. So we were kind of back and forthing. He designed it with a drawing, but then we talked about how he would have painted it. And I was kind of taking inspiration from his ideas about painting, and I was trying to implement them into how I thought about my carving. Again, so it's kind of very experimental and playful, and just helping me to kind of think about carving in different ways. I think, you know, that's really important for me in this project, was to try and kind of think about carving in different ways and experiment with it, because I think that's part of the excitement that kind of generates in the creative process. And here they all are up in the room. This is the room they were showing in. I kind of made these faux pilasters, I guess you'd call them, just nice and slick and white, and they all sat on top of them around the room, kind of evenly spaced, to try and make it feel a bit like a little cloister of some sort. And here's the other side of it. Yeah. So I'll just quickly talk about some of the key inspirations for this project and why, how it came to be. So I was thinking a lot about the Windsor project, which was a project that they had running when I first joined the college, because they were replacing all of the grotesque stones at St. George's Chapel, Windsor, at Windsor Castle. And they asked students to come up with a design. They gave everyone the stone, or they gave everyone the dimensions. People designed something. They wanted people to come up with the kind of, contemporary original design that would fit on the building. And I thought it was such a brilliant project. So I was trying to kind of harness some of that energy. But I remember when I was there looking at the stones, I think one of the things that struck me was that how excited people were to look at the building and see carving up there that was either carved by someone they knew, or they were aware that it was carved by someone who was living and practicing today. I think that's it's great how it gives people a connection to a building, to know that it's made by people who are within the society, within the community. So yeah, I kind of wanted to implement that into what I was thinking about. Oh, we've lost that image. Oh, yeah, this is the other image I wanted. So this is another inspiration. So this is Austin Emery's cornerstone sculptures. So these are in Bermondsey in South London, and he's a stone carver, stonemason. And he came up with this idea. So he kind of built these towers, masoned all the stones, took them all apart again, and left all the stones outside of his workshop. And then over a weekend, or he sort of he'd invite members of the public, anyone, didn't have to have any artistic experience whatsoever, and just get them in there and just give them a chisel and just getting them carving on these stones. and then once they'd all been sort of carved by various people over the weekend, he then put them all together as a sculpture, and there it is. And there's a few of them around that area. And again, what I love about it is that you walk past it and they're full of vibrancy, they're full of life and energy, and they are a monument for the local community to feel connected to. You know, people can walk past, they can see it, they can go, oh, you know, I carved that, my niece carved that, whatever it is. And I just love this idea of creating sculpture and architecture that connects us to our environment and to our community and to the place that we live. So I've got a few other ideas to discuss, but I think at this point I'll bring Lara in and maybe we'll have a bit of back and forth questions anyone's got. You can see that we're running out of time on the meeting, so maybe I'll bring Lara in now and we can decide what to do about that.
Yeah, I just noticed. So I think what we are gonna do is that closer to this, to the last minutes, I will end the meeting and then I'll just resend another link.
Okay.
That's probably the best. We try. I mean, depending also on how many questions there are. Thank you so much. Really, really nice to see the capitals again and have this small description. And it was such a fun project. And, you know, redoing the project with the students, I was really trying to have the same kind of thought behind it. So I was trying to get materials locally and really difficult ones. Like the students were complaining quite a lot about the hardness of the lime wood. They expected it to be really soft and easy to work, but of course, being wild grown, it's something different. So it's and as you say, it's such the approach is so different, and the carvings themselves, they have also the attitude is completely another one. So they're alive. Wood itself is, so it's not just a kiln dried piece of wood or like straight grown. It's speaking on it by itself, right? So
absolutely.
That's the beauty of it. I think we just open up the Q&A as well. My first question to you is, are you thinking now maybe to, as a teacher also at City and Guilds, to maybe do as well a course with the capitals?
Yeah, actually, as it happens, we're about to. Well, I'm going to suggest it to the head of department. We're having a meeting tomorrow. I think that part of the training that I went through at City and Guilds, I think, is, you know, it's very traditional and it's all about copying, learning the historic styles, and as important as that is, I think this project would offer an opportunity for people to experiment a little bit with what's possible and with something a bit more creative. And so, I'm gonna propose it to the department this week, as it happens. Yeah, and they're very excited. Yeah.
Super. Yeah, I think it's a really nice project, and it pushes people in such a manner, like they're overwhelmed. At least my experience was only positive. The students came out with a huge learning curve, and that's what we want. Like it's we want to learn tradition, but it's better to apply it to our modern times. So and actually, like also what you, I mean, the project itself, it's a kind of direct statement against the capitalistic society. So, and also about how we need to price things in order to survive. So it is really, the project incorporates so many ideas. So that's the beauty of it. But maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
I think I think I sort of grappled with this this notion a lot of kind of existing in a very high speed kind of capitalist economy, and seeing how that was just eroding the quality of workmanship. You know, it was very apparent to me when I was at the war offices where those capitals were going, but also in lots of the building trades. And it's sort of everything, it's all about making money. It's all about kind of speed. And I see how it's I see how it's eroding the skills, but I also see how it's eroding the idea of teaching and learning as well. You know, I know that because everyone is individualized and subcontracting, it de-incentivizes the idea of teaching the people around you, because you're actually in direct competition. And so this kind of old like workshop structure where you'd have apprentices and things like that, it's kind of, it's gone away. And you know, for better and worse, you know, there's good things about that. It's nice that we're not, you know, being a freelancer, it's nice that we're not beholden to any master. You know, we actually have the freedom to do whatever we want and make decisions about where our careers go, and that's a really nice thing. We also have this ability to fluctuate in terms of size. You know, if you're a traditional workshop, you have to employ people, and then you have to keep giving them work, and there's kind of a rigidity about that. So as we have this ability to expand and contract rapidly, and that's really good. But I also wanted to make a direct statement about the value of handmade things, you know, and just taking, and the personality that comes through with that, you know, this idea that by making something with your hands, you actually leave a big part of yourself in the work, and then you will then adorn your environment with the personalities of the people who live there. And I think that's kind of quite an anti-capitalist mode, I suppose, because I think we've kind of been more forced into this idea of just existing in a prefabricated kind of IKEA world where you have quite minimal impact on it. Yeah, and kind of this, and the formation of a support network as well between craftspeople, I think was a really key part of it. And I think, again, that's kind of something that we need to confront in this kind of economy and market that we live in, that we are going to have to form our own types of networks and guild support systems and things like that, or guild-like support systems. And I think it's a very exciting space, as well as it feels precarious. I think the fact that there's a space opening up where we can be very creative with it, and we can have our individual expression and operate in this kind of flexible way, I think is very exciting. And I think that's why I was hoping to sort of, sow the seeds, as you said, with this project.
Mm-hmm. Well, you definitely did. Yeah.
Really glad that you've run with it, Lara, and started this platform. So.
Well, we have to try. I mean, what I also notice, for example, here in Norway, the community is so small, so everybody knows each other, and I think that's the good part of the woodcarving community right now. It's so small, so I think we have great potential of just knowing each other faster and much better, build up really interesting relationships and collaborate. So somebody needs to start, or at least we need to play ping pong a little bit, right? That's the idea. So
totally.
I'm just wondering if somebody of the listeners want to join in with the questions because we have one last minute here.
Yeah, I had a question, but I'm not sure about the time. Well, first I just wanted to say how much I like the idea of using the kind of reclaimed wood and the natural, locally sourced wood, because I always find I've seen the look of disappointment in people's face when they've asked me about my work and they ask about the material, and you have to say you don't know where it's coming from, or it's coming from Poland or Germany. There's always this kind of magic that kind of disappears when you say that. So I think it's really nice to try and use this kind of local material.
Yeah.
Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, my question was pretty similar to really what you were talking about with Lara just before, but more just, after you completed the project, did your opinions change on, like, if it's possible to survive as a woodcarver by doing this kind of work when you're kind of subject to kind of working within this very strict time frame? And do you think it's possible to kind of maintain the quality and kind of carry on pushing the craft while trying to stick to this time frame?
Well, it's interestingly, one of my main sort of conclusions at the end of the project was I was sort of reading. I was reading this stuff about how it was looking at the difference between the kind of manufacturing industry and the more creative industries, and so I sort of realized that what I was trying to deal with was a manufacturing problem, so I was saying, well, because if you think about, I was sort of thinking about ornament or wood carved ornament 300 years ago, and that would have been what you could call a manufacturing industry, because there was a requirement for decoration on buildings. Wood was just the natural material that they were going to make it out of, and so all the carvers were just there manufacturing this stuff. Where it was trying to compete on a price level with these capitals that you get sent over from India, that was a manufacturing problem. I was saying, well, can I manufacture something at a competitive rate? But by kind of bringing in this idea of creativity, individual expression, and by kind of deviating away from any kind of stylistic constraints, I'd actually unknowingly stepped into a different sort of market, really, or a different sector. And so I started to think about it more as what I'd call like cultural content. So this kind of notion that the work of artists and makers and creative people, I suppose, is to create things that will connect the viewer to their culture. So that could be in many different sort of mediums, visual art, music, film, whatever it is. But that's kind of what people are looking for, is they're looking for a way to feel connected to their culture. And that's what traditionally ornament architecture would have done, right? There's all this kind of symbolism that would have been up on the buildings that would have fed into the kind of dominant philosophical narratives of their society, and they would have had this sense that it was built by the society, by the artisans working in that industry, and that would have given people a connection to it. So what I think, so those capitals that get sent over from India, I don't think they have that. They don't give you that connection geographically to the person who's made it. They don't give you any connection to the material. There's no symbolic connection, because we don't live in a world that's governed by sort of classical philosophy, as it were. So to come around to answer your question, I think that we have to find ways to create that. We have to find ways to create cultural content using our skills and our interest and our passion for what we do. And I think that there are people that will respond to that. It's interesting what you just said about the material. I think people want to feel connected to the material that you're using. So by, I think, maintaining some integrity, by maintaining some integrity and using locally sourced material, I think that becomes actually a selling point. You know, people will be drawn to it and they'll want to have it in their houses or in their buildings. I think sort of tapping into this kind of idea of individual expression as well, I think it feeds into the kind of general zeitgeist of kind of the artistic output, and so I think that makes it relevant as well. So yeah, I think for me, in my practice and the way I'm carrying on since doing that MA, is that I think it's about almost seeing ourselves as artists, sculptors, using a particular medium and a particular technique. And I think that's the way that we'll push things forward. I think finding places to exhibit, finding places people to kind of get interested in it, I think that will, I'm hoping at least that will come, as long as we maintain a kind of integrity and a standard and a quality that we are happy with in ourselves and as a community. And that's what I think about that. You know, I certainly haven't found, you know, patrons to kind of support that yet, but that's kind of where my beliefs are, I guess, and my soul is. So the other thing I hope is that things like these community projects, you know, like that Cornerstone project and teaching opportunities and things like that, I think that's all ways to bring the art form into the present day and make it relevant to people, you know, because ultimately it's a creative, expressive art form, and I think that it's important to remember that, as remembering the tradition and the quality that we're standing on the shoulders of. Yeah
Definitely. That all makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, what a beautiful answer, so comprehensive. Really, thank you so much. Wow, and this should be really our inspiration. Like, this is the way to go. It's not easy, but it's more like if we are all focusing towards a similar goal, we will achieve something as well. So
yeah.
That's just it. So I think let's continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I think Tom, you wanted to add something more?
Yeah, well, kind of.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I kind of feel like I know the answer to this now, but it's something that I kind of think about quite often, because I've experimented a bit with using the CNC, and when I first started woodcarving, I was completely against I wanted to do everything by hand. I wanted to use all hand tools and try not to use electricity, and now over time I've kind of started using a bit more, and then I've done a bit of work with the CNC, and I still struggle with it, like whether you still have that same connection. And just, as you were talking about having the kind of, could that be used in this way to kind of chase things down, or are you against? I know lots of woodcarvers have very different opinions on it. And I was wondering what your opinion on using the CNC was.
I'm certainly up for using CNC machines, wherever possible. I think I tend to, I suppose what for me is it comes down to the expression at the end of it. So I think that it's possible with CNC machines that you can lose the soul of what you're making. I think the handmade aesthetic is, for me, what gives it that kind of I suppose connection to the person who's made it. If it lent itself to the project, I would certainly be happy to use one. if yeah, I mean, I remember those when I saw some Japanese carvers that were carving Buddhas, and they would have them roughed out by a CNC machine and then hand finished. And yeah, I have no qualms about using them. I just haven't thought of a project where they'd be beneficial. I mean, we were actually talking about using them for when we were still trying to price up that job with the Capitals, because the joinery company that we were working for, or that we were making the quote for, they had CNC machines, and so we were discussing with them how we might make it work, but it still wasn't possible to make it cheaper than those Capitals from India. So yeah, I think my approach or standpoint is use whatever tools are available, but there has to be soul and integrity in the end product, and that, I think, as long as that's preserved, I think that's fine for me, at least.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Yeah, because when I was using the CNC, like, I often hear about people talking about how it loses the soul, but I have yet to kind of compare it, and that's something I'd like to do, is do one piece completely hand carved and another one on the CNC, and then carved up, and then see, kind of how you feel or how people react to the two different objects.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the other interesting thing as well is that a lot of people who are making artwork with CNC machines don't have traditional carving experience. So I think putting people with traditional carving experience behind the wheel of a CNC machine, as it were, it could yield some very interesting things. And I'm curious to see what the collaboration could be with that. Yeah, so
I might.
Yeah, definitely.
Might be interesting to maybe at some point find an artisan who can talk really about it. I know there are maybe some in Norway that have a CNC machine, so it could be potentially a future people to talk in a lecture. So
right.
Definitely, that's definitely. Yeah.
So just because it is now really a really important part of our craft, we shouldn't not look at it or like say, no, this is not, we don't include it. Actually, we should try and be open.
Yeah, I certainly would agree with that. Yeah.
And I think, talking about the next lecture, I think we're just rounding it up here. And again, Wilfe, thank you so much for this lecture. We enjoyed it a lot, and I hope also other viewers that will look at it after I put it on the channel will enjoy it as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, very welcome. Thanks for organising it and hosting it, Lara. And let's keep it going, keep it rolling.
Keep it going, yes.
Yeah.
So our next lecture will be held in May. I think there's still some time to organize next wood carver, and you will all hear closer to the date. Please feel free to spread the word and invite other practitioners and craftspeople. The recording of this online meeting will be soon available, and I will send the link around. Thank you all, and have a great evening. Yeah.
Thanks, Lara.
Thank you very much.